Thank you for coming today. We are very excited to be here. I am Aaron Reid from Sentient Decision Science,
Barry Schulz, Chief Customer Officer at BERA.ai.
and today we are presenting to you Super Bowl ad performance winning strategies with BERA.ai and Sentient. AI insights with expert analysis to reveal the winning tactics for audience engagement and how to drive brand love. A couple of notes here as we get started. The webinar is 60 minutes long. If you have a question, you can use the QA button. You are on mute to begin with, and we will try to answer questions along the way if they pop up. If not, we will have a little time at the end where we can address questions from the audience. And there will be a recording available of today's session, so you can go back and look at any key results and have some fun with looking at these ads again. So we would love to kick off today's webinar with a little poll. Thinking about all the ads that you saw in the Super Bowl, try to remember those that come to mind first. We're going to show you four here as we kick this off. The first one here is Bud Light and Bud Light's Big Men on Cul-de-sac. If you may remember this one, there's a 60-second spot by Bud Light, and you're seeing some of the imagery that was included in that ad on that background slide. The second ad we'd love you to think about is Booking.com. This was Get Your Stay Ridiculously Right. And this was a 30-second spot by Booking.com. You may remember this and some of the iconic characters that they used within that ad. The third ad that we'd love you to try to remember and think about is GoDaddy's Act Like You Know, this 30-second spot. This by GoDaddy, different approach and tactic that GoDaddy used this year in their Super Bowl ad spend. And the fourth one that we'd like you to consider is Hellmann's. When Sally Met Hellmann's. This is their 30-second spot, and also using some nostalgic imagery and references that are fairly well known in the general population. So thinking about those four ads, we're just going to ask a couple of questions for you. And you can see here, there's two questions. Which of those ads was your favorite ad? Bud Light, Booking.com, GoDaddy, and Hellmann's. You can vote, as you see, according to your memory of those. And then the second one, yeah, you're already on to it. Which of those ads was the most effective for the brand? All right. And so let's say the results are heavily, well, let's say 50% of the responses right now are for Hellmann's in terms of their favorite, in terms of this audience's favorite ad. 20% for Bud Light, 20% for Booking.com, just 1%, just 10% for GoDaddy. And in terms of which of the ads was the most effective for the brand, similar makeup, Bud Light at 20%, Booking.com got 0 votes, GoDaddy gets 20%, and Hellmann's gets 60%. And so interesting, those are, opinion polling questions. We've got different answers here, but the first one is really about popularity of the ad, liking of an ad. The second one is about impact of the ad. And both of those concepts can be important, but is this the best way to measure them? And which of these is actually going to deliver you the insight you need to justify spend and to optimize your creative? So we want to use that as a starting place for us. We'll just share those results there so you can see it. Yeah, there you go. And there's the results on which was the most effective for the brand. Hellmann's wins both the popularity contest and the opinions of effectiveness. But what you're going to see today is not opinion based. What we're showing you today is going to be scientific evidence of the level of engagement with the ad, how engaging was the ad, and the influence of the ad on the brand. Now, I say it's not opinion based because what we're doing in this testing is a scientific design that allows us to draw causal conclusions on the impact of the ad. And the measures that we're going to use to derive that scientific evidence are some of the best that we have available. First, for engagement, we're going to be showing you Sentient's Emotional Expression AI. Now, this is a technology that you can find in BERA's Innovator product. And BERA's platform and the Innovator product allows you to understand how your brand positioning and your brand strategy is effectively or ineffectively being expressed within your ads. And so the second half of this equation on the influence side is really whether the ad is moving the needle on the core metrics that make up brand love for your brand. Brand love is a tried and true tested measure that is tied to brand equity and in-market performance. Kraig is going to take us through a lot of more detail on how BERA brand love works and why it's so critical for your brand. When we understand familiarity, regard, meaning, and uniqueness of a brand, and we understand the drivers of those factors, we know how to move a brand forward in the market, how to drive growth. And so the second half of this equation, the influence, is does the perception implicitly and explicitly within your target audience change after exposure to your ad? So you're going to see today scientific evidence of the effectiveness of these ads and in a way that actually informs whether these campaigns can drive brand growth. Kraig, you want to take us from here on and get a little bit deeper
Yes,
into
sir. Thank you.
BERA.ai?
Yeah, so what I think is really exciting about the partnership between Sentient and BERA.ai is the ability to link the insights that the Sentient platform through Innovator can bring through the engagement and influence metrics. Again, scientific measures, not opinion-based measures. But are you drawing people into the ad through engagement, and are you creating the right emotional response through what the ad that you have going? So that's the engagement and influence. And what we then measure is linking it back to how you track your brand's performance. So BERA does a lot of brand measurement and management. That's what our software is based on with large data sets. And so if you have an ad that is bringing people into the storyline through engagement and you're influencing them positively for your brand, does that actually drive the right positioning elements for your brand through purpose, emotional, functional, and experiential perceptions? The BERA platform is going to highlight which specific attributes are drivers within your positioning of that next box over BERA brand love. So we measure brand love through familiarity, regard, meaning, and uniqueness. And the reason we use those as the North Star, the KPIs for the brand, is because, click one more, those are the measures that have been proven time and again by third parties that actually show you the impact of brand on business performance. So this ends up becoming a bit of a closed loop system. Is the ad engaging people? Is it creating the right influence? Does that express itself through the right positioning elements that are actually the most important drivers of brand equity? Because at the end of the day, we're all here to sell more stuff, right? We want to get to business performance. So, yep, go ahead. Next slide is fine. So if you look at the 4 ads that we tested, this is the BERA brand love curve. The height of one of the brands on that curve shows you the overall amount of equity that brand has established. It is the composite, it's the BERA brand love score, which is made up of those 4 KPIs: familiarity, regard, meaning, and uniqueness. So the height on the curve matters. And you can see here that we've got sort of a nice distribution of brands towards the top at love, like Hellman's. And then you've got brands such as Bud Light, which is much further down in its overall brand equity. And the natural question is, why are some brands on the right of the curve and why are some brands on the left of the curve? Going to the next slide, if you decompose that overall brand equity score into its components, familiarity, regard, meaning, and uniqueness, you can see on this page each of those brands' brand equity profile. So you see a brand like Hellman's, which is very much towards the top. It's strong on essentially all of those 4 metrics. If it had to lean into something and try and grow it, it would be uniqueness, which is that 4th pink bar over. You've got brands like Bud Light, where everybody knows it. Third one over, everybody knows the brand, very high familiarity. But look what happens when you get down into some of the more emotional characteristics, like, is it meaningful to me, the third bar? And is it a distinctive brand? Is it unique in the marketplace? The answer from this perspective for Bud Light is no. What this helps you to do is understand what is the core brand challenge for each of these brands. As we get into the ads, we'll see, for example, did Bud Light actually pull up perceptions of uniqueness through the ad, which is really its core need? If you looked at booking.com, it already has fairly decent levels of meaning. Its uniqueness could use a little work, but really it's just not as well known of a brand. It really needs to earn that familiarity by bringing people into the brand who want to learn more about it. So some of these metrics, the beautiful thing about the integration in the integrator platform is these are the metrics that we're testing. So going back to Aaron's
Yeah.
engagement and influence, does that successfully pull up the right KPIs for your brand?
That's so interesting. Kraig, how does a brand like Bud Light, which used to be the number one brand in America, beer brand in America, how does a brand like that get to a place of losing its meaning and losing its uniqueness?
Well, I mean, there's a number of factors. I mean, number one, I think we all understand that Bud Light had some missteps in the recent past, but it's also a category that's under tremendous competitive threat, right? You've
Hmm.
got seltzers and other beverages that people are turning to in place of Bud Light and other light beers. So there's both brand dynamics and category dynamics that play into the equity, and it's the brand manager's responsibility to understand what those are and fight against those headwinds in order to earn back the uniqueness that consumers once found in your brand and pull it back up that love curve.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's such a highly competitive space across, the categories merging, new consumers coming in and going to different options. And then just within beer itself and specifically within light beer, it's so competitive. So the challenge to really stand out and be meaningful, it's just within that environment. How does a brand manager do that? I guess we're gonna see some results and see
Well,
if Bud
and
Light is
look,
able to do it
look at the
effectively.
ad, right? Does it engage people? Is it
Yeah.
pulling them into the brand? Is it creating the right experience through the narrative of the ad that pulls on the heartstrings that are most appropriate? And
Yeah.
that really gets us to the next slide, which is if Bud Light is going to achieve higher levels of uniqueness, what are the specific positioning drivers that it needs to lean into? That's where the BERA.ai platform really comes to life. It identifies in an automated way the drivers of brand equity, uniqueness, in this case, for Bud Light specifically. So I'm just going to hit on this
Yeah.
quickly. If you look at the lower left, some
Okay.
of the attributes that are the biggest drivers for Bud Light are being exciting, friendly, up to date, honest, and cheerful.
Hmm.
We've identified those through the platform by looking at respondents and seeing how they rate the brand across each of those dimensions, and then doing that driver's analysis using a structural equation model to figure out which of those are most important. That's where the link back to Sentient and the Innovator platform becomes important because if we can hit on the heartstrings of being exciting and friendly as Bud Light, that's our greatest chance to earn back that uniqueness that we once had in consumers' minds. And the Innovator platform is going to implicitly test, did those actually improve those specific metrics after exposure to the ad?
Boy, I love that. And I love the depth of analysis here. So it's a structural equation model across how many different attributes? We've got purpose, we've got
There's about 80
personality.
perceptual attributes, right?
Yeah.
And then those are linked back to those four brand equity KPIs: familiarity,
Mhm.
regard, meaning, uniqueness. So
Mhm.
a brand can go into the platform and understand what are the things I need to convey, in this case, being exciting and friendly, in
Mhm.
order to build my brand equity, familiarity, regard, meaning, and uniqueness. And did my ad actually do that after exposure? So a
Pretty
lot of times
powerful.
when we're doing brand tracking, right, you have some lack of clarity. We're tracking certain measures. There's
Mhm.
certain creative in there that may or may not actually be hitting on the right notes. And then the question is, my brand equity went up, my brand equity went down. Is it because of media? Is it because of the ad? Is it because, right? So that due to analysis, we're closing the loop on one aspect of that through this analysis was, did the ad actually deliver?
I love it. And BERA is always on and measuring thousands of brands every week. So the entire major competitive set for Bud Light in this case. So you have the data on the target brand, you have the data on all the competition, you have the profiles of all of those attributes and the drivers of brand love on the entire category and the entire brandscape that they're competing within for familiarity. Yeah,
That's exactly right.
powerful. Then a structural equation model that identifies the key drivers of brand love. And you can pull in those drivers into your creative ad testing to understand whether your creative is actually driving the brand in the way it needs to get and stay at love. Wow,
Powerful stuff.
powerful. So, okay, so then how does a brand do that within an ad? What are some of the tactics that can help a brand achieve strong lifts in engagement, influence, and its equities, especially in Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think
How do you break
this is
through?
fun. This is fun because this actually goes back to work that Aaron and I have been doing together for years, looking across thousands of ads and which ones work, which ones don't work, and starting to draw some conclusions about what are best practices. So we have six of them here. We won't belabor it, but tactic number one is get to the story early, right? We know that consumers' attention span is really short and that they're being bombarded from all sides. If you can't get to the story early, you're probably going to lose them for the entire story. You'll see that in some of the ads we tested. The second one is these closer up moments, right? Drawing people into the story by connecting more directly with the characters really does work. You see these distant shots where people are trying to figure out what the characters are doing in the ad, tend to lose engagement. Really connecting very viscerally with those, what you're trying to express through the ad makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I would add there, like the consumers and specifically the target audience for your brand, they need to see themselves in the ad, and that's going to help make an emotional connection.
You will see that also in particular in the Bud Light ad, but you also see it in the Hellman's ad where that is done effectively and ineffectively. Consistency in the storyline. I mean, this sounds a little a little trite,
Mhm.
but we do see many ads that are trying to really tell too complex of a story or have multiple storylines running through an ad, and it confuses people. This will also be shown in one of the ads that we tested from the Super Bowl. Just
Yeah.
being clear and simple and consistent makes a big difference.
And I love the emphasis on both the visual and the audio cues. With the rise and importance of audio and sonic branding, we need to make sure we're making creative choices that on audio that deliver an emotional experience that's consistent with the brand's positioning and how the brand wants you to feel when you are experiencing with all of your touch points with the brand.
Absolutely. I think this is probably one of my favorites is making the brand a part of the story. Too many times we see ads where the brand is almost ancillary to the story. There's a story being told and the brand shows up. There's a great example in the four ads we tested from that set where the brand is the story. And it makes a huge difference because once you are a part of the story, both the engagement and the influence can go up significantly if you're playing that right and making the brand not just central to the visual, but central to the storyline.
I love that. And there's so many examples of that from Super Bowl. A lot of brands try to tell an emotional story, and that emotion can take a lot of different ways. It can be just amusement, a lot of humor, right? It can also be like deeper emotional connections that, as people would typically describe, sort of tug at the heartstrings. I think
Mhm.
of, the Lay's ad, potentially the Dove ad. Obviously, Budweiser does it with the Clydesdales and the puppies every year. Um, but interestingly, some of those ads are telling an emotional story that could be told for nearly any brand dropped in at the end. The point you're making here is if the brand is essential to the emotional connection, that's how you drive optimal engagement and influence for your brand. Yep.
Absolutely. Um, The singular narrative draws a little bit on the same theme as consistency, but too often we have these multiple threads and it confuses the storyline. I've seen ads where you're telling three stories at once and jumping back and forth between the three stories. And for the most part, consumers just can't process that. So it's creating that clear narrative. You only have 30 to 60 seconds. You got to grab them early. And once you've got them, pulling them very cleanly through that story is incredibly important.
It's great.
And
Yeah.
then the last one here is around the when you've got multiple brands in an ad. We do have an example of that here. It's probably not the best example, but oftentimes we see partnership ads where two brands are trying to co-create a story
Mhm.
and getting that balance right between one brand and the other brand and how they fit together is hard to do. And it can be done very well where you see that natural marriage and there's a balance between the brands. I've also seen it where you have one brand that's too dominant or the other brand seems to be just there for the party, right? So
Yeah.
that's another big challenge when you have multiple brands.
Yeah, we've seen that too. And the other point that you're making here is it's the balance of the brand so that they play, an equitable role in the ad. Also, you want paired brands that can reinforce certain aspects of each other or potentially stretch the other brand in a purposeful way. So depending on who you're choosing as your brand partner, just know that it's going to have impact on your brand according to the equities that that partner brand brings to the table. We also
Absolutely.
see that when we think about brands. One of them from Super Bowl was Meta, and Ray-Ban. Obviously, that's a bigger partnership because now they're co-producing product together. But it's also important when you think about the celebrities that you choose for an ad because they bring a brand to your
Absolutely.
ad. And what does that brand imbue on your brand? Those are critical choices. And
You'll see a good
um,
example of that in one of these four ads where the character selection plays a big role in how it pulls the actual brand along for the ride that it wants to be on.
yeah, and I would imagine that, and probably we can investigate this inside of the BERA database. Those pairings for a brand that's not very familiar, doesn't have a lot of familiarity. There's additional risk for bringing celebrity in because now you've got a not fully formed brand impression that's potentially more malleable depending on what's coming in as a celebrity brand partner. Interesting.
Lots of those brand matching done within the Bear platform to understand some of the pros and cons of each potential partnership.
Okay. So for today's webinar, we're going to take you live into the BERA Innovator platform. And BERA Innovator is a platform that is going to combine automated behavioral science with the BERA outcome measures, familiarity, regard, meaning, and uniqueness, as well as all of the most important drivers that have been derived from that structural equation drivers analysis that Kraig was describing. And that combination is going to allow us to pinpoint the moments of creative that are either effectively or ineffectively influencing brand love for your brand. So I'm going to share live in the platform. Make sure we're sharing sound for this audio. And why don't we start with Bud Light? Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay. So I'll give a little orientation here to the Innovator platform. Within the platform, you're going to see assets for each of the creative. You're going to see a page for each of the creative assets that you test. At the top of your page, you'll see some metadata on the ad itself, and you'll see some scores, normative scores on performance. So you're going to get relative performance data on all of your creative assets. And in this case, this is for Bud Light. This is actually an above average ad. So just sort of giving away the punchline there at the beginning, you can see that it actually performed very well. It's a very good ad. In terms of desirability, that's your influence measure. How much is it lifting love, appeal for your brand? in the 69th percentile, better than nearly 70% of all ads of similar length within the database. The engagement is also well above average, over indexing at 64. So you're looking at a combined score of a 66. Bud Light did a very good job, and you're going to see they're getting back to some of the roots and targeting that audience that has been the core of the brand. And we're going to start out with a scene that includes Post Malone, so we've got some celebrity in it. If we scroll down the page, this is your moment by moment, and we'll scrub this. We'll play the ad so you can see. What you'll see here is the valence, the emotional expression from viewers as they're watching the ad. Above zero on the scale is a net positive emotional response. Below zero is a net negative. But it's important to remember that negative emotion is not necessarily a bad thing. We can use negative emotion very effectively in advertising as long as the brand can come in as the hero that relieves that negative emotion. Often we need it to set up tension. So we get that tension and then we get the release. You'll also see a lot of this in humorous ads where you've got a lot of up and down, where you're setting up a joke, delivering on the joke, and seeing the response. So you're going to see overall valence on this view. We'll also be able to click in and look at overall emotional engagement. And now this is normative data that's going to show you how engaging the ad is overall. And you can see the normative data on the left-hand side shows you when it's high and when you're losing the audience and when you're regaining them. So we'll come back to that in a second. Emotional engagement. Then as we scroll down the page, you're going to see the impact on key attributes. First, we'll orient over here. This is the change in brand equity metrics. So this is familiarity, regard, meaningful, and unique. The core 4 pillars of BERA brand love. And as Kraig just went through, we know that Bud Light, very familiar, needs to drive meaning and uniqueness. You saw how low those scores were as a baseline on the Bud Light brand. We'll also see the drivers that Kraig was talking about, derived from the BERA platform. Honest, stands out, societal commitment, exciting, friendly, cheerful, some of those attributes that are really key. These are the drivers of the brand equity metrics, and we want to understand how changes in those perceptions lead to a lift in brand love. And then finally, what you have down here is the inclusion of implicit measures. So this is a change in the non-conscious mind from before watching the ad to after watching the ad. And you'll see this pre-post view. And the Innovator platform does your automatic stat testing on this. And you can see anything that's a significant change is flagged with a little asterisk at 95% confidence interval. What this shows you in this data here, this is the actual data, is that Bud Light, about a 102. Now, 100 is neutral on this scale. So think of that as neither positive nor negative if you were asking it consciously. But this is a non-conscious measure. So you're seeing, after a single exposure to the Bud Light ad, the cul-de-sac ad, a significant lift in the implicit emotional appeal of the brand. That's effective advertising. No questions asked here. This is simply pre-post measurement of the non-conscious change in attitude of consumers toward the brand. In fact, all of that data that you're seeing is pre-post change in attitude. And what that does for us is it gives us the power to analyze the emotional journey by that change in attitude. And I'll just give you an example here as a preview. If we click here in this emotional memory analysis button, the more appeal line, what you see is the emotional journey of the people whose non-conscious minds have been changed due to exposure to the ad. Incredible scientific results of how your ad is actually changing the minds of consumers. So before
And
we
the
get
key
into some of that
moments,
analysis, yeah, go ahead, Kraig. Yep,
and the key moments, right? I mean, this isn't
key
just
moments.
a static pre-post test. This is a moment by moment diagnosis of how the ad is performing, which scenes are doing what for you, which scenes are not doing things for you. If you click on that appeal line, one of the things I found interesting here is the separation literally at the very outset of the ad, the very first moment, among consumers for whom they had greater positive appeal for the brand. It happened in the very first moment, right? Because of the character recognition and identification of those characters, that moment changed everything. This
I
goes
love
back to
it.
one of those principles of grab them early
Mhm.
and you can bring them along for a nice journey. This is an example where they did that right from the outset.
I love it. Want to watch it?
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay, so first look we'll do is just this is your valence. So the positive versus net negative emotion. You'll see the emotional journey of the total general US population. Here we go.
You wanna go fishing tomorrow?
I got a colonoscopy tomorrow.
Fellas, I accidentally threw a lame party.
Okay, Ted.
They're on their way.
They're here. You call this a party?
Cul-de-sac party. Is
Launch! Launch! These beers are a metaphor for an invitation.
that our leaf blower? Party at the sack.
You are cordially invited to the end of the cul-de-sac.
This is incredible.
Your mower smokes meat?
Oh, a smoker cuts grass.
Hell yeah.
I spent most of my money on this.
New rig? Fully custom.
How many Bud Lights can you fit in that puppy?
As many Bud Lights as it takes.
A lot of Bud Lights. This cul-de-sac's popping.
Bill, get off the boat. The HOA's already breathing down my neck.
Oh my goodness.
Love
I
it.
love it. And then at the end there, everybody's favorite neighbor, Peyton Manning, coming in. We talked about celebrity. Appropriate choice, right? Like second best quarterback of all time. Sorry, I'm from New England, but but the most approachable quarterback in his retirement, right? Who is more approachable than Peyton Manning as a football celebrity? I don't think I know one. So right choice of celebrity to reinforce the brand. So where the brand needs to be approachable, right? And where are we? We're in the backyard at a barbecue, and Bud Lights are flying everywhere. That's a party I want to be at, right? You want to be at that party, and apparently everybody in the cul-de-sac did too. So they just went at it, and so consistent with the brand. And just to make sure, it's not our opinion. Let that data tell us whether that's true or not. Cut the data by the change in the non-conscious mind. The blue line are the people who implicitly feel more positive toward the Bud Light brand after watching. So this, as Kraig was saying, pinpoints the moments of your creative that are driving the change in attitude towards your brand. Wow, can you tell I'm excited about it? so, so as Kraig mentioned right in the beginning, we got Post Malone, we got relatable characters right up front. And then you'll see all the joke lines hit. Here they come crashing through the fence. It's even big man on cul-de-sac. You see the blue line? Even greater amplified emotional experience among the people whose mind you have changed. And we keep coming. Here's the next one. This was actually my favorite. The leaf blowers. How are these cans not exploding on people's porches? First of all, I don't know. We give them the license, the creative license. Doesn't matter. And now here we go. This one, you're cordially invited to end of the cul-de-sac. All right, that one seemed to play really well. And here's my second. Here's my second favorite. Again, not my
This is
opinion.
incredible.
Here's the data.
Your mower smokes meat?
Oh, a smoker cuts grass.
Hell yeah.
I spent most of my money on this.
It lands.
Oh my goodness. It lands in an important ways, right? It's not just us laughing about it. That's the people who are laughing about it are the people who implicitly feel more positive about Bud Light after watching it. Really well done. Really good job.
And I would just say here, tying it back to, did it do it in the right way?
Yeah.
Did it lift uniqueness? Yes. Did it stand out more? Yes. Right? Was it more
Yes, it
friendly? Yes. Right. So all those key
Yep.
drivers of brand equity rose as a result of seeing this ad. So thumbs up. They did a great job.
Really well done. Okay. Let's do the next one. We will do booking.com next. Would like to start with emotional engagement.
Yes,
Yeah?
that sounds good.
That sound good? Okay. So just to refresh, this view here is total emotional engagement, whether positive or negative, whether people are responding emotionally to the ad. And I'll emphasize again, negative emotion isn't the enemy of good advertising. It's the absence of emotion that's the enemy of good advertising. And so when you look at this normative score, it does build up and to the right, which is what you want, but look at where it is. It's below the line for most of the ad. All right, here we go.
With hotels and vacation rentals, Booking.com has something for everyone.
See, Schulz! You got anything more boutique?
Oui, right this way.
Yeah, we're talking.
What about something more family friendly?
Maybe a resort with a water park?
Or somewhere less family friendly?
Yep, one Vegas hotel for the bride-to-be.
What if we hate everything?
We have free cancellation. Find exactly what you're booking for. Booking.com, Booking.com.
Yeah, so if you show that line, Aaron, just
Yep.
bring it up without, I think, the whole line there. One of the things you'll note here in this particular view, down is not good. Up is good, right? Unlike the emotional valence where positive and negative can both be good, this is a case of, are you grabbing their attention? So if you look at the very beginning of this line, the first 3-4 seconds, you're seeing decreased engagement overall, whether positive or negative. People are simply tuning out of this ad, going back to those foundational principles of grabbing them at the outset. This ad did not do as good a job. Now, if you kept them watching, as you were saying earlier, did the engagement build over time? Yes. And there's a couple of key moments, like the child coming down the slide and splashing in the water, where you did see engagement. But things like the color palette, the distance of shots, the narrative that was being expressed, I'm still not 100% sure. This is opinion, not based on data, but where the Muppets fit in, obviously they are relatable and they did drive things that are important for the brand, like being family friendly, etc. Those are drivers for this brand. So it hit those notes by including those characters. But this is another one where, how do you make those characters and the other brands, as you said, a central part of the story and directly tied back to Booking.com? Probably missed the mark a bit on that front.
Yep.
So it's interesting here. I would ask you just to scroll down quickly. I won't spend too much time on this, but if you look at the F, familiarity, regard, meaning, uniqueness, this is a brand sitting on the left-hand side of that love curve, needing to earn more familiarity, right? Get people to want to lean in and learn more about the brand. So if I look at my familiarity score, did I do it? Yes. How did I do it? Well, they do find it more unique, right? They found it somewhat engaging, at least if you manage to watch the entire ad. They did build engagement over time. And then some of those key drivers of being, if you scrolled up just a shade, right? Is it sincere? Yes, right? So it drove sincerity. It was exciting. It drove friendly. These are all key drivers for the brand. So this is a case of close, right? They did drive some engagement, not probably enough. Maybe the beginning of the ad could have been a bit more engaging to pull people into the narrative. The thing, if you scroll down to the bottom, that I think is important on the appeal is, did Booking.com get credit for taking us on this journey? The answer here is probably not, right? So Booking.com went up a bit in its emotional appeal, not in a statistically significant fashion, but both Expedia and Priceline, as tested with your implicit association test in the Innovator platform, those both rose. What that tells us, or an interpretation, is any one of these three brands could have run that ad and gotten the same credit for it, because none of them distinctively owned that journey.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It could have been any three of those. Do you want to cut on the data in any way to show elements that are effective or ineffective?
Yeah, I think meaningful is an interesting one to cut on here. So if we look at those who found the brand to be more meaningful after being exposed to it, there are some key moments. You do see a very similar profile in the engagement in the valence line between total pop, which is in pink, and those who found it to be more meaningful. But there are these moments where you really spike in making that brand relatable and meaningful for you. So if you look at that kind of right in the middle of the ad, where you get a big difference between just the total population and those who found it more meaningful. There's a moment where they really did make it more relatable.
Let's want to play it.
Yeah,
Which one it was? Let's see.
right in the middle.
With hotels and vacation rentals, Booking.com has something for everyone.
See, Schulz, you got anything more boutique?
Oui, right this way.
Yeah, we're talking.
What about something more family friendly?
So family
Right, so-
friendly. So we're
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
Muppets come in. This looks friendly. You hear that boom, boom, the bass come in, hear that soundtrack, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, so this is like, okay, this is friendly. This is all right. And then what happens?
Well, and then you've got the meaningfulness really hiking with the Muppets, right? So there is a relatability back to the Muppets. Each moment where you have a close-up of one of the Muppets, you see that separation between Total Pop and being more meaningful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so that's related to being, yeah, more meaningful. And we said more friendly too, yeah? Oh boy, look at
Absolutely.
that. How about that? So friendly, really driven by Muppets and family imagery. But why do we see such a big decline right here? What do you think that is?
Well, this is an interesting section. If you want to just play this one section,
Yeah.
let's watch it drop.
What about something more family friendly?
Maybe a resort with a water park?
Stop there.
Yeah.
You know, you look at that sequence, and number one, it's darker, it's more complex. And then when you get to the real caving of it, it's when they get under the bed, and now you're upside down, out of focus, not quite
Yeah.
sure what's going on. It's very hard for consumers to process that in a meaningful way. So this is a section of the ad where maybe that wasn't the best visual to express what they were trying to go for.
Yeah, I love that analysis. Thanks for pointing that out. And if you had this insight prior to going into your, this was a 30-second, $8 million buy, you probably would change your final cut, right? You'd say, okay, that's not working. We're trying to communicate something here, but it's not landing. It's apparently confusing the viewing audience.
Yeah, and I think that's, it's an important point. Oftentimes we'll get clients who come to us and, they don't have time to go reshoot. They don't have time to do things, but just simple insights like that, which is really only 2 or 3 seconds of the ad. Optimizing that can actually drive fairly dramatic improvement because, again, our attention spans are so small or short that you lose them at a moment, you might not get them back.
Love it. Yeah, so we know we've already shot it, right? We're already gone to production. We got all the copy that we're working with, and we know the family works. We got a nice rise here, and then we just don't have the right cut in here. This is not the right scene right there. So that is something
if family was really going to
production.
drive it, right? And you saw that rise, extending that rise through a different way of expressing that family friendliness would have been potentially a big win.
Yeah, love it.
On
Okay,
game
let's
day.
do another one. GoDaddy. Now, this one didn't get any votes for, at the beginning of the webinar, any votes for favorite. It did get, I think, a couple of votes for potentially most effective for the brand. And that actually, the engagement and influence scores might actually speak to those votes, because this scores really low on engagement, the 3rd percentile. But it scores really high on influence, 82nd percentile. So you might look at that and say, how can those two things coexist? Well, we got to remember that the influence score is if you can get people to watch to the end of your ad. If people are watching this whole ad, then there is a significant lift for the brand. But if you're in the 3rd percentile on engagement, how many of those people are actually watching to the end? You're not actually capitalizing on the great potential impact that you built into this creative idea. And we'll play this now just to give you a sense. Just first of all, take a look at how low that engagement is. I mean, it is bottom of the barrel, and it stays there. We get a little rise at the end. This is very important, but I don't think anybody got there, right? And
Having that at the end is not your friend.
We love ads. During Super Bowl, we're watching ads. This ad popped up on the screen, and I remember turning to my colleague and saying, did GoDaddy decide to do a 15-second cut instead of a 30? Was that a 30? And the reason I realized the next day, no, it was the 30. They ran the 30. But the reason I thought it was a 15 is because I had totally tuned out for the first half of this ad. I wasn't even watching, and you'll be able to see why. So let me play it here, and we'll get a sense of how this ad starts and then how it finishes.
Actors, we can make you believe we know what we're doing, when in fact, we do not. Whoops, I have no idea what these buttons do. I've never driven a stick in my life, but my heart is roll yet! Small business owner, because I have no idea what I'm doing. But GoDaddy Aero does, using AI to build a logo, website, and social content. For Walton Goggins goggle glasses, because if your goggles ain't Goggins, they don't belong on your noggins. With GoDaddy Aero, it's like you know what you're doing.
I love the beginning of this with the setup.
I just got that line. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, I love the beginning with the setup you'd explained earlier.
Yeah.
The negative engagement, right? The negative emotional line that we're seeing here is the setup, right? They're building that tension, setting up the ending for it. The challenge is, number one, it's way too long, right? It takes 2/3 of the ad to get to what you really want to get to, which is the exciting Goggins goggles.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. Like they've set this up, and this connection back here for viewers, I've never driven a stick before. It is actually relevant to the message they're trying to deliver at the end, but there's no context for it. There's no context up front. I don't know what's happening here. And it's so dark. Look at how dark this is to begin with. Now we got some light there, but we're back to the darkness. And as a viewer, what have you done to try to engage me into this story? What story you're telling? I have no idea what story you're telling. But once we bring in what is actually an innovation from GoDaddy, this is something new that they're bringing that's quite useful. So anybody can build their website, right? He doesn't know what he's doing, building websites, but with GoDaddy Aero, he doesn't have to. Like that's an impactful message, only if you can get him to the end. So if we come down and we look at performance, it actually does a significant lift for GoDaddy. That's the potential of this ad. And it changes familiarity, regard, meaningful, and uniqueness in significant ways across all 4 measures as well. Does it drive the drivers? Innovates with purpose, right? GoDaddy's been around for 20 plus years since their first Super Bowl ad, which was very different in nature, was just all about like awareness and driving awareness. This ad from the brand needed to bring something new to market to make it more meaningful, relevant, unique relative to where it was on the curve. If you remember where it was on the curve, everyone, it was down in the lower right, like moving toward divorce. It's got to be meaningful and unique to get back to love. And so it had to drive innovates with purpose. So if we take a look at that and look at that journey, we know it has a significant impact on meaningful. Oh my goodness.
Especially at the end.
Look at that, especially at the end. And where does that happen? This is the insight for the brand managers, for the creative team. Look at the change in emotion once you get through that opening to deliver at the end.
Go, website, and social content. For Walton Goggins goggle glasses, because if your goggles ain't Goggins, they don't belong on your noggins. With GoDaddy Aero, it's like you know what you're doing.
It's like you know what you're doing. And what drove that more meaningfulness? Well, it's innovates with purpose. As you see, it follows the story and also has that same emotional response, the biggest change in emotional response at that moment where we're actually bringing in the innovation that GoDaddy is trying to deliver. So if you're the takeaway from this creative concept has got great potential, 82 percentile influence. The execution for Super Bowl in this 30, non-optimal because of the setup in the beginning not being engaging enough. All right, let's do one more.
One more. This one's fun.
All right. How would you like to tackle this one? Engagement, valence?
Let's look at engagement first. I think this is a good story, which tells sort of two parts of those best practices. Let's play the ad. Let's watch the engagement line and see where we actually start driving engagement for this ad.
All right, let's go.
I can't believe they let us back in this place. Oh, no good?
No.
Oh. There we go.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, boy.
So good. Oh, it is so.
This one's real.
Oh.
Add that as a sandwich. I'll have what she's having.
Love it.
Oh
It's
my goodness.
if you want to show the scores real quickly, I think it is telling. Is it engaging? It's
Yep.
not as high as we might like, right? And we kind of know why. But is it influential? Yeah. So if you look at the engagement line, just keep that open for a second. It's another case of, did I grab them early? No, right? So we had the panning through just some restaurant, a couple of old people sitting at the table, all the way through there until you get to Meg Ryan. Once she appears and you start to understand where the story is going, the engagement really kicks in. So maybe a little bit of a miss at the very beginning, but that we have seen time and again, a small miss, even at the beginning, can really suppress engagement for the rest of it. Now, luckily, yeah, definitely recovers as you get into that memorable scene from When Harry Met Sally replicated here. People definitely engage. It really lands with people.
I'll have what she's.
And that last one, right? I'll have what she's having. Is that engaging? Absolutely. So the punchlines really land. The ad overall lands. It's just that pulling in at the beginning that probably could have been optimized.
You know, I wonder, looking at this, you know, from, you know, your and my generation, like When Harry Met Sally was a huge deal, right, as a movie. And I immediately recognized the scene, right? And I know the two characters, and they're quite a bit older than they were back when they were in that movie. But for, you know, the younger generations who are watching this and part of general population, that's a diner scene, maybe not getting it right away. But the end with the engagement, there is something universally true about the story that people can relate to. And bringing in Sweeney at the end to connect to the younger generation. Brilliant move, right? And her delivery is perfect. So what would you like to analyze within this one?
Well, I would scroll down and see, you know, did this build the brand in the right way, right? So what's that? Where does Hellman sit? Hellman sits almost at the top of the love curve. Incredibly strong brand, wants to maintain its familiarity and regard, grow its meaning and uniqueness. Did it grow meaning and uniqueness? Yes. In fact, uniqueness jumped a lot. So it created a real sense of uniqueness for the brand. And then in what way did it do that? If you scroll up to the drivers, things like being exciting. Is it more exciting? Yes. Is it, you know, creating a personal connection? Yes. It was very relatable. People could see themselves because of that nostalgia and the relatability of the characters in the ad. So while it may not have quite nailed it on engagement, if you look at what they did achieve, they built the right brand equity metrics, uniqueness. They did it in a way that leans into the drivers of brand, like things of being exciting and creating that personal connection. And they got positive influence for the brand at the end. Scroll down to those influence scores. This is one of my favorite examples because if you look at all the other ads, or at least most of the ones we tested, you did see a big category effect. Brands failed to own the narrative. Look at what happened here. While Hellman's jumped, they did not pull up Kraft. They did not pull up Cane's, right?
Yeah.
They owned that narrative. And the reason they did it was because they made the brand the story.
Oh,
you can't tell that story without Hellman's, right?
No.
It's about the brand.
It's about the brand. And look at the brand come front and center right there. Central tendency, bias, focus, great behavioral science technique. And look it's real, right? And then Billy Crystal says, oh, it's a real one, right? I mean, it is the narrative, right? And then, oh my goodness, I can hardly say these things with a straight face, but it hits the spot at the end. I mean, I love the creative team's bravery here. Just boom, right on the head. We're not shying away from this, right?
No.
That's the whole point of it. Does Hellman's hit the spot? Yes, it does. And when she puts way too much on that upper, it's not too much, right? That's exactly what I do. Don't tell anyone.
There isn't too much mayonnaise.
I am eating too much mayonnaise. And what happens with personal connection among people who have a personal connection to the brand? Oh my goodness.
And
even
look where it
stronger,
rose,
right?
right at the beginning of the ad.
Yeah, connects
Right.
and then delivers here even more powerfully at the end. Wow. Anything else you wanted to mention about this looking more meaningful? How about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's being able to grab people at the beginning, which they did a very good job of, not among total pop quite as well.
Yep.
Within the audiences that identified with these characters, absolutely grabbed them and made that brand more meaningful, pulling up all the right drivers of brand equity and engaging consumers. And most importantly, at least for me in this ad, is the ability to own that narrative, right? They got the credit for it and they did not allow their competitors to rise with the tides by telling a more generic story.
Ah, that's awesome.
Did
So,
you we only have 2 minutes?
yeah. Why don't
Is
we
there a
pause there?
question or two that came up?
Yeah. Any questions? Oh, let me come into the Q&A. We do have some coming into the Q&A here. Let's see. Do brand equity metrics factor into the influence of the ad score? How does the data feed back into the brand love score? Can you share an example of how Emotion AI has predicted real-world brand success from previous Super Bowl ads? How can brands use these insights to drive long-term consumer loyalty beyond the Super Bowl? Very interesting. And I know many brands this year also utilize social media as part of their campaign strategy. Are you able to understand the impact of this short form content as well? Which of those four would you like to take, Kraig?
Well, I'm excited actually. I'm going to pass this one back to you because I was very excited about some of the work you guys have been doing in that social testing space with your emulator. So the answer is absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe you just talk a little bit about how you're doing that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So the question on the social media testing, yes. And you get behavioral metrics in feed. So as part of these campaigns, obviously you've got the $8 million Super Bowl TVC, but that entire creative campaign is coming to life in different ways and touching people within different channels. So part of this testing platform allows you to test whether your social aspects of your campaign have stoppage power. What's the decay rate, the percentage of viewing within the actual social feed environment? And then from that exposure, are you lodging brand in memory? Is there an implicit trace of your brand after exposure in an actual social media feed? And is it lifting desire, love for the brand? So these same approaches, same metrics that you're seeing here on broad TVC campaigns can be used across all of the assets of a campaign. And in that case, social media is now got the majority of advertising spend globally, over 50% now going into social versus the historic spend on TV.
Fantastic. Well, we are out of time. I would invite any of the questions we didn't get to. We are here. We'd be happy to answer additional questions. But I hope that this was entertaining and informative. We'll do it again next year, but it's been great. I really appreciate everybody's time.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.